Hello everyone, and welcome to another sunny outdoors lockdown edition of ACY Securities. I'm Clifford Bennett, Chief Economist. In the US on Friday, we saw rather significant downside in the jobs data. It was actually a jobs data collapse. And then we saw the ISM for services, not too good at all, also rolling over. It is a fact that that twin tsunami I spoke about 3 months ago of inflation and Delta are hitting the US economy, the global economy, the Australian economy. There's no doubt about that now. The evidence is in the data. No one believed me when I first said it, but there you go. Australia's definitely going to have a recession. That's still my central forecast in Q3 and Q4. The surprise, of course, to most economists will be that Q4 is a negative as well. I saw that Westpac is just starting to come to the party with a similar view to ourselves. They've mentioned their Q4 forecast could be 0% flat. They weren't quite brave enough to tip over the edge into the negative forecast. But we certainly are, and we've been saying it long before everyone else. We never expected Q2 to be a negative number. Others did. The market was surprised by that. We thought Q2 would be positive. We all know Q3 is going to be negative, but Q4 is going to be negative as well for Australia. This whole idea of vaccinations and a miracle opening up and everything gets back to normal and there's a boom type recovery, that's all myth. It really is. What we're going to have is a slow, methodical reopening over perhaps several months, if not many weeks. And during that period, we're going to have high hospitalizations of all ages. There were 3 children on ventilators in Sydney over the weekend, and that is going to weigh on the minds of decision makers, both from the health perspective and the political perspective, of course. So, yes, vaccinations are a good thing. Yes, they help in a major way. Do they solve the problem? No, they don't. That's why there's plans for extra ICU beds and being able to move people around in ICU between different hospitals. Back to the United States, that data was not good. What I think we're going to see in price action for equities moving forward in the US and generally around the world is this kind of confusion. So we're going to see a lot of wide swinging sideways price activity. But I do think the dominant risk is to the downside. The dominant risk is always where no one expects it to go. Very few people are looking for the market to fall. That's where the dominant risk is. For the Australian dollar, we've seen a tremendous upswing. Part of that, of course, was out of the excitement over the record trade surplus for Australia. But when you look at the data, exports are only 5% better than they were pre-COVID. But imports were 10% lower than pre-COVID. So most of that record trade surplus is a function of lower imports, not a booming economy and exports. It's good that exports are strong, but it's not, the trade record surplus is not an export story, it's a low imports story. So that's something to be aware of. It does look like in the equity market at the moment, the price action is beginning to reflect fundamentals and roll over a little bit. And I think that's going to be the nature of this week, if not this next month. I think Australia as a society has really set itself up for a great deal of disappointment that the miracle in vaccination path doesn't turn out to be a miracle after all. So it will help, but there will still be ongoing problems. There will still be ongoing restrictions. Consumers will be more wary, and people will be more wary about dining out as well. Of course, there'll be some enthusiasm to do so, but not everyone will think it's such a great idea so soon in the vaccination curve. The Australian dollar had that big spurt, as I said, on the back of those record trade surplus numbers, which were more about a slowing domestic economy than anything else. And is therefore vulnerable to a reversal at some point. It will take, though, some strength in the US dollar, and we're not really seeing that as yet, but this week I think we will see this US dollar correction stabilize and begin to move higher, and that will put added pressure on the Australian dollar. Still very bullish gold, still very concerned about oil. Clifford Bennett, Chief Economist, ACY Securities.